alongside the man, the myth, the master of the Trek respect himself, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy.
Oh, we've got terrible delay on your video right there.
I will turn that off. I didn't like
Yeah.
that.
The computer can't take it, Captain.
Mm,
But yes,
that's
we
better.
are the Armchair Producers, and we bring you the chain movie of the week every week, where we link one movie to another into swapping from myself choosing to Travis to myself to Travis. And this week, Travis chose Rocky Horror Picture Show. Next week, it'll be my picture of choice. But we've got a bit of a show for you. We have got the return of the Trek Perspective, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. And am I right in thinking it's going to be a double bill, or is it a triple bill at this point?
It is only a double bill. I did try to get the idea of a triple bill off the ground. And poorly shut down.
That
was not a popular choice. Not a popular choice. I think it's a Trek that Michelle can handle in a certain period of time, and she's had her fill. So we were talking Insurrection and Nemesis today.
Lovely. Obviously, Nemesis probably being famous for two things. One being the movie that killed Star Trek movie for a while, and having a young Tom Hardy in it.
And almost killed a young Tom Hardy.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, yeah. But we've got a couple of bits. Like Travis has watched episode 2 of The Rings of Power, and I've watched episode 3. I decided, because I was bored on my lunch, I watched the mid-season episode of She-Hulk. Travis got around to watching one of the biggest blockbuster movies of recent memory, Top Gun Maverick. And I finally checked out, because it's available on Disney Plus, Thor: Love and Thunder, as well as the new animated show on Netflix, Cyberpunk Edge Runners. First few episodes of that.
Have you played the game, Bert?
I did for a few hours. And it was rather boring.
Powerfully average, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really quite dull.
I still do not comprehend why they had such a comprehensive character creator and then have it first person, so you don't see
yourself. Yeah,
it's such a weird choice.
It's so weird to see a game like that. I think maybe it's improved now. I don't know. Yeah, it's a bit like No Man's Sky, right? No Man's Sky, if you're a gamer, that launched with a huge hype and then massively disappointing when it actually came out. But they've continued to work on it in subsequent years. Now it's actually a really fucking good game.
Yeah.
But I guess the problem is if you fuck up on launch so badly, you destroy your brand the way that Cyberpunk did. That Sony take you off their store.
Yeah.
You've got a long journey back. So I'll be interested to hear how a cartoon or TV show stacks up against the video game.
Yeah.
Should we roll straight on into the chain movie this week?
Let's get on with the chain movie of the week. One, Rocky Horror Picture Show. One of the few movies in my life that has caused me a variation of PTSD.
So you've seen this quite a bit. This was a regular in acting school for you. This is the first time I've ever seen it. I am notoriously averse to musicals, and this most certainly is a musical. So this is not something that ever called out to me saying, "Oh, you absolutely have to see this." Like, I mean, the amount of people who were shocked that I'd never seen it. Have you never seen it? It's like it's almost as bad as the people who were shocked I'd never seen Grease until a couple of years ago. And
it only took a broken foot.
It wasn't a broken foot. It took a fucking a horrible reboot of the Ghostbusters,
that's true.
And a complicit media to tell you it was good when it most certainly was not. And it took Rotten Tomatoes to rejig what they consider fresh.
Yeah.
So before it got a fresh rating. That still has a 73, by the way, which is outrageous. Anyway, so I'd never seen this before. Obviously, its reputation precedes it as one of the cultiest cult movies that ever culted. Famously lives on in stage shows and midnight screenings around the world. For those like me who have not seen it, a newly engaged couple have a breakdown in an isolated area and must seek shelter at the bizarre residence of Dr. Frank N. Furter. So inadvertently, this is the third film of 4 set in the big spooky manor on a rainy night.
Yeah.
In a row. Like the second in a row, third of the last 4 weeks have been set in giant spooky manors. This is a different type of film in a different type of spooky manor, but I found myself going, I didn't think through that very well. So cast-wise, we have, of course, the great Tim Curry as Frankenfurter in his most iconic role. The Susan Sarandon in a very early role for her, I imagine, is Janet Weiss, the heroine. And that Meatloaf, is he have a name in here you probably heard of?
Yeah, that's Richard O'Brien, especially for anyone from the UK, because he was instrumental in something my growing up. There was a show called The Crystal Maze, and he was the host of that.
Oh, Richard A. Wadey brought that back.
Yeah, apparently.
I was watching it on SBS, and I don't have that context of it. Apparently, I thought it was some new show. I'm like, this is terrible.
Yes. There's reasons why.
And I feel like Barry Bostwick might be a name some people know, but I don't know why, because he's not really done anything of particular note.
His profile picture on IMDb does make him look a bit like what's his name? James Brolin.
A little bit, yeah, maybe that's it.
Like a knockoff James Brolin.
But I think most of his cast are most famous for doing this film. I mean, apart from probably Meatloaf and Susan Sarandon, whose fame sort of evolved beyond this. Even Tim Curry, I don't think, ever outlived this role. And this was his film debut.
Yeah.
It's, of course, famous for its music, Never Time Warp, Sweet Transvestite. And it's also famous, I think, for probably being the first cult film that became so incredibly popular. It's not the first cult film by any stretch of the imagination, but it kind of popularized the idea of cult films and people dressing up and doing what they call shadow casts, acting out the scenes in the cinema while the film's on. I know that became very popular with the Blues Brothers as well, and many other films subsequently, The Room and stuff. But this film kind of, I think, was the originator of a lot of that. Yeah. All that said, I didn't hate this. I should admit it. I didn't hate this as much as I thought I would. That said, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
It's pretty wacky. Yeah. I kind of sort of followed the inverted commas plot for the first half an hour or so. And then it completely lost me.
Yep.
By the end, I was like, I've got no fucking... And she probably had to tell, like, I kind of got it at the end again. I kind of figured a whole bunch of wacky shit happens, and then at the end, it turns out... spoilers for a almost 50-year-old film. They're aliens. Frankenfurter is an alien. And Raff, is that the guy's name? And Magenta either are or turn into other aliens who try to take him home back to the planet Transylvania. In a transvestite system or something, right? Transsexual system.
Transsexual in the Transylvania system.
And he doesn't want to go home, so they kill him.
Yeah.
So that was random. So I kind of get that. Like, he's an alien and they want to take him home and now he's dead. It was just really the hour or so in the middle that stopped making sense.
I think I have... I've had musicals explained to me in the best possible way, care of Neil Gaiman's Masterclass that I've been listening to. And he was talking about genre, and he said, one of the reasons one of the things about going to a musical is the plot doesn't really matter. It's just a device to get you from song to song so that the songs kind of make sense the way that they're presented to you. And that's very much the rule here. The plot is there, but it's just to get from one dance and song routine to the next. And even the musicals themselves, it's sort of like, okay, I don't really know what they're about.
And you're probably right. It is. It's just to get you through to keep you entertained to the next song. Is what differentiates it from a recorded concert. But I guess the strength of a musical, for me at least, is largely based on how those joiners hang together. So how strongly connected the songs are. If it's funny for a comedy or entertaining or whatever you want to call it, if those joins are strong, that's where I think maybe a musical has a better chance of succeeding for me.
Yeah,
so I think of film musicals I haven't hated quite so much. They are usually the ones. So the producers, I quite liked. Well, I like the original film probably best, and I saw a stage show, and the Matthew Broderick, Nathan Lane films, all right. But I mean, those bones are still very strong from the original Mel Brooks film.
Yeah,
and it's just so funny.
Yeah.
Then it kind of gets by.
Exactly.
Whereas something like Grease, where the story is pathetic, and the songs are pathetic, it makes for a pathetic movie. So that didn't hang together. And this one hung together despite the fact that those bones are very brittle in between the songs, because some of the songs, at least, are very catchy. So Time Warp is, a timeless classic, I think. You don't like it?
I just had to hear it so often, and everyone just always wanted to do the Time Warp dance. And it's like, no, I don't dance. I don't enjoy dancing. I happily will burn myself rather than dance.
I can see that, and I appreciate that.
So kind of being in a scenario where it's like, oh, let's just do this again. It's like, I'm in hell.
Well, maybe it's a UK thing or an American thing. Like it's a common thing for shit dances like that pop out at weddings, and parties and stuff. I don't recall anyone that I can remember doing the Time Warp dance at a wedding or a party or anything I've been to. Normally in Australia, it's the fucking bird dance or chicken dance or whatever it is.
Oh God, that's a classic.
And the nutbush.
The what?
The nutbush.
What the hell is the nutbush? That sounds like something like a category on Pornhub.
Well, it could be. I think it's a Tina Turner song. Tina Turner.
Oh, Tina Turner. I thought you said something Jonas. I was like, what? One of the Jonah brothers?
Bear with me here. We're gonna show you some nutbush dancing. This is YouTube.
Oh. Okay. What? I already hate it. Yep. I'm already hating it.
Here we go. I don't know why it's called the koala nutbush.
Oh dear. It's line dancing, basically. Oh, just. Oh no. Yeah, that's just. I've never seen that before, and yeah, I'm turning that off now.
These German judges giving it a 5. Anyway, so I think our commentary might have been terrible. The highlight of it. So yeah.
Just nope. That's
a
that
no
is
from George.
That is representation of hell to me.
Yeah, well, I can understand that, because that's usually the one where people are going, come on, dance. It's fun. And you're like, is it? Is it?
Maybe for you, not for me.
I say no.
But anyway, let's get back to Rocky Horror.
Thank you very much. He got distracted. In sharing that, have lost my video feed. So, it's the happen. It didn't happen last week, that's for sure. Well, I got computer.
No, we're a professional group.
I'll be right back.
No worries. So yeah, let's just get a little for the uninitiated, if there are any still out there, as to what legacy the Rocky Horror Picture Show has. This has been in many ways kind of lampooned, and he's back already. Good. He's back.
So this is what happens when I share a tab. So I need a new computer, I think. So if anyone's interested in being sponsoring the show, giving me a new computer, I'm up for that.
Hi-Fi, reading cinema, we could be sponsored by both of them.
Alienware.
Yep. Not spyware though.
So what are we saying? I remember we're talking about the Rocky songs. I was saying I think the songs are catchy, but you think they're a bit overplayed, and you've been kind of subjected to them too much.
Yeah. But even then, it's sort of like they are still indisputably iconic, and there is, in spite of the oversaturation that I have of them, which is the same as what I get for most musics, thanks to working in retail. You still kind of just go like, essentially any time Tim Curry is there singing and dancing and just being Frankenfurter, is like, fuck yeah, damn good.
He was good, wasn't he? He owns the screen every time he's on there. And it's bizarrely entertaining for a portion of a film.
Yeah.
Like there's the Transylvanians, I think it's what they call it, the weird people with the glasses who look like they're from an 80s film clip. And I don't really know where they come from or what they're doing, but they're there and they are weird looking and entertaining. And then there's a scene with Meatloaf, which is over in about 3 minutes, where he's a delivery boy or something and gets murdered with a pickaxe. And you're like, okay.
No, you missed this important part. He was the first man that was created by Frankenfurter, and he only used half of a brain to create the Meatloaf, and he ended up being this rebellious, rambunctious ne'er-do-well that was put into the vaults. And then he created the kind of Atlas-looking Adonis,
Rocky Horror,
with the other half of the brain.
In the gold, a man in the gold underpants.
Yeah.
This is the last film he ever did. He never did another fiction. I think. Oh, sorry, tell a lie. He did do an uncredited role in something else a few years later. So I missed some major plot beats, and that completely ruined the experience for me.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out what the fuck was going on most of the time. Like, what the hell is this? I found myself thinking while I was watching it, no wonder this fan. I mean, it's like I said at the start, it's the cultiest cult film that ever culted. It's almost like someone set out to make a film to be a cult classic.
Yeah.
But they didn't. The story behind this is an interesting one. I did a little bit of research. That this film was released in a similar way to, say, Jesus Christ Superstar or Hair, which were both popular musicals of the age. And there's a story about Meatloaf and one of the producers or the director went and saw it at a midday screening, during a day screening, and there was no one there. The cinema was empty except for them. And it was a complete and utter flop on normal release. It was only a couple of years later when some clever dick at the film company's marketing department decided to give it, thought maybe this will work well in the midnight screening sort of circuit, having some films like Flamingo by Roger Waters a couple of years earlier had done quite well in that space. That's when it really started to explode.
Yeah.
With, especially in cities like New York and Chicago, where people would turn up, like I said, in costume and dance and sing and act out the movie and yell things out. But obviously, they intended this to be a standard film success. They did not intend for it to be a cult icon. And from there, they're obviously probably incredibly successful, I imagine, in terms of it is still in limited release today.
Yeah. Which is, it's incredible to see that. But I think it's really bizarre thinking about like the similar kind of movies around the same time, these musical ideologies, and then being popular. There was a period, much like with cowboy movies. Everything was cowboy movies, and everyone was making cowboy movies, and they were successful. Now we're in the superhero phase where everyone's making superhero movies. There was a phase where there was a lot of musicals coming out because they were Oscar bait. They were the family fun. They were serving a lot of audiences, and they were just the flavor of the month, so to speak.
Well, if you think about it, they were kind of the Marvel films of their day.
Yeah.
In the sense, as we know it today, very rarely is a studio going to take a chance on an original story that's not connected to a previous existing book or property of some kind. It's in an existing universe, an existing franchise. It's a sequel, it's a prequel, it's based on a book, it's based on a comic, it's based on a TV show, it's a reboot, something like that. That's where films live today.
Yeah.
In a way, this is what studios were doing in the 70s because, well, if you're going to make Jesus Christ Superstar, people already know what that is because that's been playing at their local theater and on Broadway, and the records come out and the songs are on the radio. So it was a safe-ish bet, or a safer bet in the sense that there was an existing brand. And Rocky Horror Picture Show, if you don't know, was a stage show before it was a film. It played for years in the UK, and very briefly in the United States. Apparently, it did not do well, even with Tim Curry in the stage show. So if you're what a shame. Would have been cool to have seen that, I guess, just from one of those sort of historical perspectives to see Tim Curry doing Frankenfurter on stage in like Broadway or wherever it was playing. I don't know. But that's kind of where musicals. That's how I sort of view musicals of a time. They were the safer bet.
So, but then you look at what is on display in this musical, and I doubt that you would get anything quite this overt about any of the topics that are now hot button topics in kind of social commentary about sort of like the gender neutrality of Frankenfurter going from what are their names? Janet and Brad separately, the over flamboyant nature of it, and the casual murder of Eddie, and all of that sort of stuff. We've not entered a phase where that is safe TV or movie to the point or mass market appeal. I mean, they do it in a really entertaining way, but this was 1975. This came out.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself thinking that as well while I was watching it. My God, this must have been. Well, I don't hear a lot about it being controversial. Maybe that's because it disappeared beneath the waves without much of a ripple initially. But I mean, the ideas on display here are incredibly progressive for the mid-70s. Like, you have a lead role for your hero, your protagonist, I guess, if you will, is an LGBT character. He is a trans. Today, I guess you would call him a trans person. He's referred to himself as a transvestite in the film. I feel like that's a word we don't use anymore. Maybe that's not cool anymore. I don't know. If I'm talking at school, and you tell me, I don't know, but he's essentially a transgender, or at least gender, gender neutral individual, or gender fluid. I mean, maybe both. But who knows? That he's playing with gender in a way that. But then again, that was not quite so unusual at the time. If you think to David Bowie. He was that androgynous thing at the time, and he was playing around with his sexuality and his gender. And I feel like the glam rock movement was a definite influence on this film. And interestingly, the costume designer claims that her costumes were a major influence on the punk movement.
Okay.
Take that for what it is. I found the idea of it also. There are scenes depicting essentially some fairly light homosexuality, if you will.
Yeah.
I use the word light homosexuality. It's not graphic, and but when Brad and Frank are in bed having a cigarette together, it's that's code, right?
Yeah.
For what's just happened. You're like, and this is something that, as far as I know, is available in regular run of the mill cinemas. This is pretty out there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The 70s were pretty wild because you can imagine 10 years later, in the Reagan years in the US, maybe this wouldn't have come out.
No, it would not. It simply would not. This wouldn't have got into cinemas during Thatcher's reign in the UK. It was just like, thank you.
So I found myself thinking the same thing. It was really quite an interesting film to see at the time. And I mean, we talked at length about the documentary about transgenderism you can find on Netflix. I think on Netflix called Disclosure, and the whole idea of you can't be what you can't see. So to actually see essentially a gender neutral transgender, however you want to describe it, person on screen for people who were feeling that way about themselves must have been a revelation at the time.
Yeah,
maybe that explains some of its popularity.
I think that certainly just my thought process for that is, especially living in London, it was people say, oh, it's night and day, two stark differences. And yeah, there are certain parts of London, particularly around Soho and sort of like Chinatown kind of area, that central London area, where their personality, the personality of the city does change at night, and you get more of the outlandish, braggadocious, big personality, alternative lifestyle, however you want to put it, people out and about feeling more confident in their space. So this having that midnight viewing success kind of makes sense, because it's like, all right, this is the time when we're safe. Oh, fantastic. Let's see what's on the stage. Oh my God, it's me up on stage. It kind of rings to some logic.
That said, there are some issues in this film around consent.
Yes, there are one or two.
So that would be this angle in the scene I was just talking about, whereas Frankenfurter essentially pretends to be Brad or Janet to Brad and Janet to basically con them into having sex with him. Is pretty out there, and you'd have to say it's essentially rape, because that's a non-consensual encounter for both of them. And it's played for laughs.
Yep.
I actually must say I did sneaker. It's like, oh my God, what have you done to Brad? I've done nothing. Why do you think I should?
And then exactly the same line.
What have you done to Janet? Nothing. Why do you think I should? It's like, it's actually very funny. Well, I found it funny. At the same time, I'm like, oh, that's problematic.
Yeah. But I think in the spectrum of what we're being presented in the movie, I think it's kind of okay. It's like with the rules set out in the movie of what the rules of that world are, it kind of fits, I guess, because neither of them, aside from Janet basically having a song about how she's really horny now, it's kind of all right. Neither of them seem to be actually offended by it. I mean, is this kind of okay in the world of Rocky Horror? It's an interesting one. It's certainly not something that you could get away with today. Not even.
I wonder how deliberate it is, but it's almost a metaphor for this couple's sexual awakening.
Yeah,
they sort of go from mild to wild in the period of however long they're in the mansion.
Yeah,
I don't know. I assume that was a deliberate choice.
I think so, and I think the sort of like the swimming pool dance and song number is all about them kind of coming to terms with that, and especially the visuals of them kind of being turned to stone and then being turned back and sort of like being dressed up and just being enveloped in the moment of euphoria, and then the sadness of seeing Frankenfurter die and then having to run away from the teleporting mansion. Is like, okay, so did they just go back to normal life afterwards? It's like, you know what? We don't talk about that night.
Yeah, but these days there would be a sequel and there'd be a spin-off, like Magenta, the movie,
Well, you say that. There actually was a pseudo sequel called Shock Therapy, or no, Shock Treatment, sorry. And it was Janet and Brad become contestants on a game show, but wind up as captives instead. It's set several years later. Their hometown, which has become a giant TV station, residents are either participants or viewers. They're married now, but their romance has fallen on the rocks. Ostensibly to fix their marriage, Brad is imprisoned on the program Dentonvale, the local mental hospital, while Janet is conscribed to become a new star. As Janet is entranced by the high life, although they're to speak one day, she forgets Brad, who is trying to woo her away.
When was that released?
81.
Wow.
I wonder if it's got a 36 Metacritic score.
Yes, that probably doesn't sound great.
Mm-hmm.
Unintended sequel sounds right up there. American Psycho 2.
Harsh.
So I found this an interesting film. I am glad I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, speaking of sequels, I feel like have you ever seen Hedwig and the Angry Inch?
Yes.
I feel like almost that. I saw that a few years ago in LA, and this is like a spiritual successor to this film.
100% agree. 100%.
I don't know. I have to assume the creator. I forget who the guy who wrote Hedwig and the Angry Inch was, but he must have been a huge fan of this.
You got to think. You got to imagine.
I'd love to watch that film in the show sometimes. That'd be great.
There's your goal for, like, I had a goal for Clue. You can have a goal for Hedwig.
I mean, I've never seen the film version. I saw the live version, and it was really good. That I am doing my I don't like musicals reputation. No good here, am I? Oh my God, Barry Humphries is in that sequel. Speaking of people who are no good. Anyway, I'm glad we watched it. As I said last week, sometimes you got to zig when they expect you to zag.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, from a film history perspective, it's an important film.
I think so. And the fact that it introduced the world to the delightful pleasure that is Tim Curry, it'll always have a place in my heart.
Even if it is,
it's a confused place in my heart.
Confused, this is
I need Frankenfurter to come and help clear up that confusion.
Anyway, you have the keys if you're done with this film.
I do, and we are gonna follow Susan Sarandon, but not just Susan Sarandon. We are gonna follow her voice to 1996. We are gonna go to a lost classic, because he has made some fantastic movies that have become generally more aware. But Henry Selick, he directed stop-motion animation version of James and the Giant Peach in 1996.
Wow, rolled up.
Yeah. And this one has got a cast of people that we would know. You've got Joanna Lumley, the late Pete Postlethwaite, Simon Callow, Richard Dreyfuss, Miriam Margolyes, Susan Sarandon, David Thewlis. And I think those are certainly the only names that I recognize out of that lot. But yeah, stop motion animation for us is the next
I haven't seen this film, I don't think. It's a Disney film, so I assume it's on Disney.
Neither have I. So I have not seen this one, and I am a huge fan of stop motion animation. So this is a great opportunity for me to plug a terrible gap in my collection.
And I remember liking the film when I was a kid. The book when I was a kid. So I haven't seen a Roald Dahl film in a very long time. There you go. So that's an interesting one. We're going from sublime to ridiculous next week. We're going from Rocky Horror to a family movie. Because we're a family show here. And there should be plenty of X's for that one. So.
Exactly. It's like not gonna quietly suggest Pete Potterway as the launching off point because he's had some fantastic films, and he was one hell of a talent.
Did we watch Coraline once, didn't we? Was that being part of a chain? I feel like it was part of a chain.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think
Henry Selick did that as well, didn't he?
Oh, that was Keith. The guy did the voice of the cat. Keith. What's his fuck?
Anyway, it won't be Coraline because we've done that one, and that was a fucked up movie. Hopefully, this one's a little bit dark as well. Because I enjoyed that one very much. Keith David.
Thank you.
The coolest man who ever existed.
One of the best voices. Now, should we talk about episode 2 of The Rings of Power?
Yeah. It's been about a week ago, so I'm struggling to remember it a bit now. But we talked about it last week about the. I guess we couldn't avoid talking about the fuss going on about this and how people have lost.
It's so weird that they chose Galadriel to do twerking at the end.
I know, but it's really empowering, and the fact that Megan Thee Stallion is now canon in the Tolkien universe, I think it's a step forward for society, don't you?
I think so.
So epic drama set thousands of years before Lord of the Rings, yada yada yada. You probably know what it is. It's on Amazon. Episode 2: Galadriel finds a new ally. Elrond faces a cold reception from an old friend. Nori endeavors to help a stranger. Arondir searches for answers while Bronwyn warns her people of a threat. Episode directed again by J.A. Bayona. And I think he gave us the heads up last week. This one's a little bit more focused. Whereas the first one was very broad. Here's everybody. Here's where they are. Here's what they're doing. This episode, we are focusing in on a little bit more of both storylines and a little bit more action, a little bit more happening.
Absolutely.
We have Galadriel, played by Morfydd Clark, has jumped off the Elven transport, going back to Valhalla or wherever the fuck it was going, Frankston or something. And I don't know. But she doesn't want to go there, and who would blame her? Frankston sucks. But and she's swimming, which is an interesting choice. And she happens across a raft of survivors, and there we have some interesting going on there. I won't spoil it for people. We have what's his name? Arondir. Investigating a large hole in the ground, which is exciting. Bronwyn is trying to tell is playing the role of a Cassandra here. The fight scene between her and the orc, I thought was probably the highlight of the series so far for me. I found that very, very entertaining. Really, really nicely done.
It was great. That sequence was really, you felt the appropriate level of threat and dread. It looked good. It was really well done overall.
I'm finding the story with the Harfoots pretty fucking dull because they're Harfoots, they're hobbits essentially. So the hobbits usually the least interesting characters in any film. Oh, I said it, people. I went there. But there's one of them discovers a giant that's fallen from the sky. That happens at the end of the first episode, and they are now trying to figure out what the fuck's going on with that giant. At the same time as Elrond is being set up for, I imagine, getting the rings cast. The Rings of Power.
Yes.
I thought it was good. Like, I don't really understand why it's copying so much shit. Like, I mean, it's not the best thing I've ever seen. Then again, it's not going to be because I'm not a massive fan of fantasy. It's not really my chosen genre. But it's certainly entertaining enough to make me want to watch episode 3. I just don't have a whole lot of time to watch it yet, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be up with George in episode 3. Very frustrating, I'm sure, for the viewers to find I'm an episode behind him. We should have probably coordinated this. But you'd think we would.
Professionals.
Oh, by the way, look what arrived today in the mail.
Oh, goodness me. I may one day see money from that.
If you haven't already, this is a very fine book by the one and only George Tarrant. You know, if you live here in Australia, he might even sign it for you if you live in Melbourne. But still available now. We haven't plugged this for a while. Completely off topic, but is available on the Amazons.
Yes,
where you watch Lord of the Rings, apparently. So
exactly, if you've got Prime, you've probably got Kindle already. You can download the digital version for free, ladies and gentlemen.
You can't sign a digital version, sorry, but you may sign the screen of your Kindle if you ask very nicely and promise not to sue you afterwards. Anyway, I'm thoroughly flummoxed why people hate this so much. It's I guess the other interesting development here is Elrond meeting the dwarfs, and this is our first viewing of first time we see the dwarf kingdom. And I guess that's one of the first controversial bits is we have a female dwarf who's also a person of color, because that couldn't possibly happen. And people seem to be really digging deep into it. Well, Tolkien, didn't describe them that way. Like we said again. I just have to remind anybody who's watching who's pissed about this series, they're fictional characters.
What?
We talked about this at length last week. They're fictional characters.
Hollywood's lied to me.
What did you make of you in episode 3? How are you finding your series?
I'm still really enjoying it. Like I really liked episode 2 as kind of a palate cleanser from the first one, where we had, like I said last time, we talked about that, like very stiff upper lip, almost royalty and regal kind of machinations of the elves, and how that was very long and drawn out and slow and meandering and very Tolkien feeling. And in episode 2, you get more of the lifestyle of the dwarves, and the fact that they can't. There's the line where it's sort of like, oh, it might have only been 25 years for you, but it's been 25 years for me, and I've got a whole family. You missed my wedding, you missed the birth of my children, and all that stuff. And it's nice having that dichotomy of viewpoints coming in and seeing a very different type of lifestyle for a very different race to what we saw in first episode. Very much enjoyed that. And
come back to that orc fight. So if you remember the orcs from Lord of the Rings, like they look pretty badass.
Yeah.
The characters in the film, apart from the hobbits, but Sean Bean and Viggo Mortensen's characters, I forget their names, Aragorn and Sean Bean.
Boromir.
They just take they can wail on the orcs. They kill a lot of orcs. They all kind of do pretty much, except the hobbits. They're a threat in large numbers mostly, except for that really big Ultimate Warrior orc. Who
oh my god, he is the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, you know exactly the one I'm talking about too. The big Ultimate Warrior orc's kind of a badass and kills people. But most of the orcs they can be taken care of. But you can, a human can go head to head with an orc and expect a good chance of winning if you're a skilled warrior. The orc in this is really kind of portrayed. One orc takes two of them to really take down, and he just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming at them. And what I really liked about this, really setting the orcs up, which we haven't really seen a lot of yet. It's a genuine threat to these people, this small community of people, and it's kind of telling us, the ones we saw later on, maybe very different, or it's just the people fighting him how to keep some skill. And you need to you come strapped, with proper armor and stuff, and you need to know how to handle yourself if you're going to go head to head with one of these things. I thought that was really smart, really well done. Again, I feel like people are just maybe people complaining about it haven't seen it, or they're just objecting on because someone else told them to.
I think are very warped. What I totally agree with you on the representation of the orcs. It is to use D&D as an analogy. Many people just, if you suddenly have an encounter and it's sort of like, and goblins appear, people just go, whatever. But goblins can actually be one hell of a genuine threat if RP'd correctly and if utilized correctly in that environment. And that's the same kind of feel that how they've been represented here at an early level, which a standard human would kind of qualify as, they're going to be a threat. They're kind of rabid and they're strong. These orcs, they're feral kind of creatures. The way they're looking at the moment, and the comparison, the variation, I understand for two reasons. How and why they are, shall we say, softer in Lord of the Rings is that it is supposed to be this band of genuine heroes and absolute fucking badasses, and seeing them kind of like Muso through their games where they're just swinging their sword around, just killing people and just destroying and wrecking fools. It makes them look really badass and heroic and powerful, but it does make them seem more of like they're not really a threat. It's when you suddenly start getting the Urukai coming in that suddenly it's they're fucked up. So it's really nice to have that threat and that. So twisting the knife a little bit is going, okay, you know this threat, but you don't know this threat. It works. It works to drive the story and gives compelling reason for her to then just go back into the fucking tavern with the head and just go.
That was a badass scene. I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
and it's like good. I just don't understand, the objection. I keep saying I don't understand the objections. I think it's good. I don't even like fantasy. I don't even like Tolkien very much. Maybe it helps I don't like Tolkien. Because I'm not as attached to this purest vision of what it can be. It must be exactly it was written in the books. One step outside the boundary. This show is not based on one of his books. This show is based on the fucking footnotes from the Silmarillion. You know, so get over it.
This also brings in an interesting thought process with the stipulations, the contractual stipulations of Amazon on this show. They have to have 5 seasons, so it's not going to get canned, which also suggests that if they're doing it right, they've got basic hit points for each one, story beats for each season, that sort of like that mid-season bit that they're going to go to, that how season 1 is going to end, how season 2 is going to start, and all of that. They should have a rough plan of that. And
I hope so.
Apparently it's going to tell the equivalent story of about 1,000 years before Lord of the Rings, and they are going to condense a lot of that. So we see the fall of Numenor and the kind of the hiding of the dwarves and all of that sort of stuff. So it's going to be interesting what liberties they take, but I think it could actually serve to make a really compelling, potentially very interesting, well-written 5-season TV series that is self-contained in that 5 seasons, just telling its own story with the Tolkien set of rules, shall we say.
Yeah, it's interesting. They wanted their own Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably maybe they've got one. I would be fascinated to know what the viewership's like.
Yeah.
They don't have to tell us that because I don't think they do anyway. They're not Amazon are publicly traded. Maybe they will. The rating on IMDb currently is a 6.9 for the show as a whole. Remembering that it was review bombed to hell and back. So I understand I was critical of Rotten Tomatoes earlier.
It does give us something of some point of measure, at least.
Rotten Tomatoes is worse. So it has an 84% critic score and a 39 audience score.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know how much we can trust that.
Yeah.
Just because, we understand it's been review bombed. It's become one of those sort of political hot potato shows that there are people who are making videos on YouTube getting lots and lots of views and stuff because they say it sucks.
Yeah. All right. Well, I won't talk about episode 3 because I'll let you catch up.
But are you still enjoying it? You're gonna keep watching?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got it's still introducing a couple of new characters and doing slow reveals of other some more focus on the bad guys a little bit, and there are a couple of names that you suddenly go, oh, I recognize that name. Okay. I see what's going to happen there. Building a little bit of that destined tragedy or heroism that helps get a bit more immediacy and urgency and agency in characters. So I think they're doing well, and it still looks great. I'm sick and tired of so many shows having really good CGI and visuals and production values for the first episode or the second episode, and then it just kind of going, we blew our budget in the first one. We can't afford that anymore. Let's just get a pig standing on its hind legs as an orc, which I would ironically kind of find funny to watch. But this is like the most expensive TV show that has been produced to date, apparently, and it shows. When you look at it, the production, the values, the costuming, the sound, everything looks stellar. So yeah, I'm in.
Glad to hear it. I'm so impressed with it so far. It looks amazing. You can see the money on the screen. It's entertaining stuff. If you haven't seen it and you're just believing the YouTube videos and the stuff you see online, give it a chance. I think you'll be impressed. Yeah. Now, speaking of Disney, not speaking of Disney at all. Speaking of big tent poles, She-Hulk, you kept going. I've stopped. How is it going?
Well, I'm going to bundle my She-Hulk thoughts into a little bit of conversation about the announcements from D23 as well. If we just have a bit of a rundown and thoughts and pour one out for the death of Hollywood. So She-Hulk, this latest episode, which is episode 1, 2, 3, 4, it's called "Is This Not Real Magic?" She-Hulk's new client, Wong, is suing a magician for unauthorized use of the mystic arts. So considering in episode 3, Jennifer Walters addresses the audience straight away and says, oh yeah, this is my show. Don't forget that. We're not going to have a guest star every episode. 4 episodes in, they've had a guest spot every episode. So it's sort of like, yeah. And then in the beginning of this episode, she again addresses the audience as saying, hey, yeah, it's great. We've got Wong. That gives us a little bit of Twitter immunity or something along those lines. Don't know if you should really be addressing that straight away because, yeah, it does seem like a cheap cop-out. Not good. It's not good.
It's a funny thing is that, like, popular TV shows that are good don't have to address what Twitter's saying about them. The only other thing I can remember doing that was when they were so clever and they inserted the stuff in Ghostbusters 2016 about the people on the internet don't believe the comments on YouTube or they're stupid or whatever. And you're like,
that was so saucy. Yeah.
You saw that fucking trailer. You saw that trailer too. That first trailer for Ghostbusters was terrible. I don't care who. It's terrible. So, but like, if you're addressing your critics like that, I think they kind of win. Just keep making the TV show you want to make.
Yeah. Still, like we talked about it off camera when I caught up with you and Michelle. I have seen proof of life that she is still alive, everyone, by the way. It's fine. The Trek perspective is somewhat consensual, contractual, should I say, because she lost the bet.
To a necessary legal standard.
Yeah. We were talking about it, and it's an episode where she essentially joins Tinder as Jennifer Walters, and all that she meets are assholes and, you know, crappy, uninteresting guys, and then not remotely interested in her because she never sort of like, she's just presenting herself as she is comfortable with, to reinforce the fact that there is only one nice guy in the She-Hulk universe, and he's moderately okay, and he's only been in one episode. It's just bad writing. It's bad writing. I get the message, and we talked to Michelle about this, and the most poignant line of in the first episode where she says, "Oh, those are the baselines for my day." It's like, yes, that is very good. There are much better ways to express that continuously through the show. They're just doing the cheap, lazy narrative way to do it. On top of that, shit CGI persists in this show. It looks really bad. Anytime She-Hulk is wearing that fucking silver suit, it looks like N64 graphics or something. It's bad. The stories are uninteresting. It's not actually really developing the character of Jennifer Walters / She-Hulk. I'm not interested in any of her friends that are in the show. I'm only interested in Wong because Benedict Wong is good at what he does, and he is nailing his character. He has done since the first Doctor Strange movie. There's nothing else remotely engaging in this show, and I don't know why people are liking it.
They believe they like what they're told to like, I think.
Yeah, and I think they're just holding out hope until Daredevil makes his cameo, which, there's going to be another cameo. And considering there's only 9 episodes in this season, we've got 4 episodes down with cameos in all of them, plus confirmed Daredevil in at least one of them. So that's over half of the show with cameos. Not good. Not good. Now, let's go on to some of the big announcements from D23, Disney's big brand announcement. And there was tons of stuff that was announced, and all of it is unoriginal.
It's all based on pre-existing properties.
Yes. So we've got the Muppets, more of the Muppets Mayhem, which is coming next year to Disney Plus. We've got High School Musical, the musical, the series. I'm not even joking in that. They've got 2 colons in that title. And then they've got American-Born Chinese.
This one I'm interested in seeing.
Yes, because it's actually essentially bios about some of the most profound acting talents that are now finally actually being allowed to have a voice in Hollywood.
And facing Michelle Yeoh and Ke Huy Quan. From Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
And so, Daniel Wu is in here as well. Who?
Yes.
I've seen him before. Anyway, but it's based on a graphic novel, I believe.
So I'm excited to see that, and hopefully it doesn't get the typical Disney bio trend of just being very, very candy cane sweet. I hope that they actually have some substance to it, but we'll find out, I guess. We've got the Percy Jackson and the Olympians TV series, the Proud Family, which is, considering it's louder and prouder, it's an all new. It's next season. Growing up.
I'm just looking for his announcement. Like, apparently, that's a season 2. I've never heard of the first season.
Me neither.
There's another one down here. There's a sequel. They made a sequel to Doogie Howser, and I wasn't informed.
I don't care. Then we've got, there's the Santa Clauses. National Treasure, Edge of History TV show. What else have we got here? Marvel's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, which don't know, don't care.
It looks like it's for kids.
Yeah. What else have we got? I'm just looking through the list here. Yeah, Doogie.
So Doogie has a second series of something John Stamos is in. I never heard of the first season.
Yeah.
Zombies
Zombies 3.
Apparently, I love this line here. The third installment in the uber popular Zombies franchise. So uber popular, I've never heard of it.
Descendants 4. And then, of course, we've got all of the movie releases, which are painfully disturbing. I have a question for everyone out there. And that is, who fucking asked for a Mufasa origin story?
Well, that's kind of what I've been joking about, like I was talking about earlier, like with a Rocky Horror movie, like a Magenta origin story, a Riff Raff origin story, an Eddie origin story, a Columbia origin story, probably a spin-off about Transylvanians for children. But this is just after we have had the live-action Pinocchio come out, at least in the US. I don't know if it's come out here.
It's on Disney Plus.
Apparently, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah. It is. This Mufasa. Why? Who cares? We know how it's going to ultimately end because we've fucking seen Lion King. And you just know that it's going to be exactly the same story arc. It's going to be the same story. And maybe Mufasa's father doesn't die horrendously like that, but he's going to be a rambunctious young child, because all kids in Disney movies are rambunctious young children or misunderstood geniuses. And they are going to go through some kind of adversity. They're going to find a group of friends that accept them for who they are, and then they're going to come back, and then they're going to be ascending up to being the Lion King. Like, wow. Yep. Feel like I saw this a million times before. That's what it's going to be.
I was also disappointed to hear we're doing it Inside Out 2.
Yes.
Guys, please. Don't get me wrong. Inside Out is a fucking masterpiece. It's brilliant.
Yes.
You can't get lightning. Look, they got Toy Story 2 and 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it does happen, but it's pretty rare. And, I'm sure there's a lot of other more original stories they could be telling with their Pixar studio, because most of the stuff that Pixar spits out now is pretty bad.
Yep. We've got Hocus Pocus 2. We've got Disenchanted, which is the sequel to 2007's Enchanted. We've got Peter Pan and Wendy, which is there was something that I read about it, so where it's addressing the gender imbalance. Wow, that's one of the things that they're already pushing for it. Oh, okay, but haven't we seen the Peter Pan story and Peter Pan and Wendy too much already? Come on, just do something different. We've got the Haunted Mansion. We have got Mufasa. We have got Disney's Snow White again. We've got The Little Mermaid. We've got Elemental. This is a new movie, but it's Disney and Pixar, so it's now somewhat questionable. Win or Lose, which is Pixar's first TV series that they're doing. Elio, which is another Pixar movie based on original idea, which could be fun, but again, question mark. Inside Out 2, didn't ask for it. Zootopia Plus, who cares? Iwaju, which is Journey into a Futuristic Version of Lagos, Nigeria TV series. Could be interesting if you're a young child. There's Strange Worlds, which is coming out later this year. New thing. Wish. New. Then we've got the Lucasfilm stuff. We've got the TV series of Andor. We've got Willow. We've got the next season 2 of The Bad Batch. We've got Tales of the Jedi, because they haven't destroyed the mysticism and mystery of the Jedi too much already. They needed to absolutely make sure that it was never going to come back. Ahsoka, Star Wars Skeleton Crew, Mandalorian Season 3. Somehow they're doing like what Goat Simulator 3 did, where they made a joke about there only being 2 of them, but it's Goat Simulator 3. They're doing Indiana Jones 5 apparently.
That's an interesting choice. I mean, you would have thought they'd go with 4 first.
Yeah, exactly. Marvel Studios, we've got Wakanda Forever, we've got Ironheart, which is a TV show, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumanium, Werewolf by Night, which it's some kind of special presentation. Don't know what it is. Secret Invasion, which is a limited series, I think. Armor Wars, Loki Season 2, Fantastic Four, Echo, Daredevil Born Again, which Charlie Cox recently came out and said, yep, the first season of the Disney show is not going to be season 4 of Daredevil. It is season 1. So what are they going to
read? What does that actually mean? Like, you just throw away with storylines and everything that was in the original? Or?
Yeah, because even though they were over at Netflix, they were still kind of connected to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I think is still technically canon, maybe? So, curious. Captain America New World Order, the Thunderbolts, the Marvels, and then you've got Avatar, The Way of Water, woohoo! Muppets Mayhem, High School Musical, the series, and the rest I've already talked about. So very little original stuff coming out of Disney. And people might argue, yeah, that Disney don't make original stuff. But considering they own 20th Century Fox, they own Miramax, they own all of these other things, I feel like they should have enough space in their distribution and production canon to create something new that isn't just Pixar doing something new that probably going to end up going to Disney Plus because Disney don't actually have much faith in them anymore.
I guess what it made me, I had to think about this the other day, is that they just really need to give you reasons to stay subscribed to Disney Plus. I feel like Disney Plus is probably, aside from, Marvel, and, any future Star Wars film projects, which apparently are all still on hold right now. They just need to keep you subscribing to Disney Plus. And despite the fact that She-Hulk is trash, and I would go so far as to say I think pretty much every Marvel series, apart from maybe WandaVision, has been average to disappointing. For me, at least. I know some people like one or the other. Falcon and Winter Soldier had its moments, and Loki had its moments. But overall, most of them, except for WandaVision, for me, have been pretty average to bad. But they've still got more subscribers now than Netflix. The Mandalorian gave up halfway through. Boba Fett gave up halfway through and made it season 2.5 of Mandalorian. Like, people don't care. As long as they keep getting a new Marvel show, a new Star Wars show, or something else they recognize, a new Marvel film, a new Disney film based on something they recognize that they can fucking put the kids in front of them, they'll shut the fuck up for a couple of hours and watch Pinocchio, the live action piece of crap. They don't care. It's working.
And
quality
then
doesn't matter. Content matters.
And it's just extraordinarily disappointing. And I went into work after D23 finished, and everyone was going, "Oh, did you see so much cool stuff?" I was like, "Where? I didn't see it."
So I'm with you. It's none of that inspires me. I mean, I have Disney Plus, but mainly just for the show. I think that's not very rarely do I find something good on it to actually watch that I want to watch. I mean, it would be nice if I know they've got the Stars side of thing as well, which is slightly more adult oriented. But I think to myself, the only streaming service now that I think is doing interesting adult, what we call it, adult content. If you're not, it sounds like adult content, like something a bit naughty, but TV shows like for grown-ups. Is Apple. Like Netflix makes garbage now. Prime is determined to play in the fantasy space, which is fine. But actually, intelligent adult-oriented television is Apple. We had some really good shows this year, which we've talked about in the past. what's the one with it? Ben, I can't remember the name of it, but
Severance.
Severance is the one, and we have a new season of For All Mankind, and we have the Breakfast Wars and stuff like that. The Morning Wars, sorry. It's just they're actually we're doing
the Wars would be great though.
It would be interesting. Yeah, Count Chocula versus Snap Crackle and Pop.
Damn your Captain Crunch.
There should be a Super Smash Brothers style video game with them in it. That would be cool.
I'd be down for that.
Anyway, it's actually kind of soul destroying seeing so little interesting stuff happen, and then you see people who you respect going, "Oh, it's good, it's really good," and you're like, "It's really not. It's really average." Like, I mean, could you please stand up for something better?
Yeah. And it's not as if they're going, "Oh, well, Disney's running out of money. They need to." No, they are more rich than they have ever been. They can afford to take a gamble on some things.
Make something interesting. You've got go and make some $2 million productions on the side.
Yeah.
I was reminded this week because Clerks 3, I think, comes out in the States this week.
Yeah.
No release date in Australia, Kevin. We exist.
We do.
But
we are not the island off the side of England.
It's been getting good reviews. Yeah, there you go. It's a film made for $25,000.
Yeah.
Kevin hasn't always done great work, but like wherever Kevin Smith's, I mean, give these guys a chance,
Yeah. Yes, please. Instead of just going, okay, you know what? We'll get this independent, this mildly successful independent director or production group. We'll give them the keys to, like what they did with Chloe Zhao, of going, go into the Eternals, and we're gonna hold your hand for the whole thing. Like, no, give them something so that they can just really express themselves, and just give them a little bit of more money than they've ever had before. See what they make. You can fucking afford one flop a year. Easily, you can afford one flop a year.
Yeah, look to Warner Brothers. They can afford multiple flops a year.
Ooh, getting the knives out. Segue into the trailer.
Just write them off. That's what they do. I think it's time to go back to the Trek Perspective.
Back to space. The Trek Perspective, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the reason you have all been waiting for. Travis has been holding out on you.
It had some complications, we have some busy lives, Michelle had an essay due last week, which she had to write. So yes, I promise. Just queuing it up here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, while you're queuing that up, did you watch the Knives Out 2 trailer?
I haven't seen that yet. No.
Ooh, it looks good. And there was an early review that I read about it, and it's 9 out of 10. So
hopefully so.
It's got one hell of a cast as well in it. I'm just going to quickly roll off in Glass Onion is what it's called. Glass Onion. So we have got a cast of Daniel Craig returning as Benoit Blanc, Kate Hudson, Jessica Henwick, Ethan Hawke, Edward Norton, Dave Bautista, Madeline Klein, Catherine Hahn, Leslie Ullman Jr., and Janelle Monáe. It's a good ensemble cast, and it looks fun. Right now,
so you see my shared screen there?
Yes.
And greetings and salutations, and welcome back to Trek Perspective after a significant break. Our tour of India and the summit went very well. But for your viewing and auditory pleasure, myself and my delightful co-host Michelle are back this week. And we've got a double feature, but it's going to be a Nitro double Trek Perspective this week as we motor on towards the end of what has been a remarkable journey. A Trek one might say. Through the stars, through the cinematic universe of Star Trek, we are talking Star Trek Insurrection and Star Trek Nemesis this week, the last two Star Trek Next Generation films. How are you feeling, Michelle, that you're so close to the end?
I cannot believe it, Captain.
Have we made you a fan yet, or have we got to keep trying?
I don't know. Something is changing, but I'm not sure if it's actually that it's getting better or it's good or I'm feeling immersed in this universe, or I've just been, captured and I've fallen in love with my captor. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, to be honest. It's a very reluctant liking that's starting to happen. It's extraordinarily reluctant. So yeah,
there's Stockholm syndrome there, but we'll call that Vulcan syndrome just to keep the theme of the show. So Star Trek Insurrection, we'll talk about that one quickly first. From 1998, when the crew of the Enterprise learned of a Federation conspiracy against the inhabitants of a unique planet, Captain Picard begins an open rebellion. Said made in 1998. You usual Star Trek Next Gen cast, plus the great F. Murray Abraham playing Ruafo. This is one of the lesser Next Gen films. I genuinely would say people don't fondly remember it to say they would. First Contact and maybe even Generations has a 6.4 on IMDb. What did you make of Insurrection?
I didn't mind the story, actually. I was quite engaged with it all. I like the idea of exploring the fountain of youth through sort of a little bit of a sciencey edge to it. And I thought it actually had a lot to say about things like dispossession, future generations coming for past generations, the things which are coming back to bite us. Picard's growing on me a little bit, although I still miss William, I got to say, in his dulcet tones. It had a more storyline for me, and I actually felt quite engaged. I think it's because we've discussed this before. I don't quite like the space battles as much because they're so clunky and silly.
You got bored at the end when the space battle happened, didn't you?
I did a little bit, yeah. Look, I'm not sure what's also happening is that we're getting to the later years. So we're getting to 1998. We're getting to years where I start to, where I can sort of enjoy film. I always find the 70s, depending on what it is, the 80s, quite difficult for me to watch how clunky filmmaking is still at that point. And I think that Star Trek didn't have the good writers at the time, or didn't understand basic plot structure or how to keep people engaged, and characterization, and also special effects. So I think all of that is starting to come together and actually flow a little bit better, as you would expect from any movie. And it's becoming beyond just getting a episode of a series and extending it into film. They're actually getting a little bit more creative and engaged with what they're doing.
I'd like to note that Star Trek: The Motion Picture won an Academy Award for special effects, by the way. So, yeah, they don't understand special effects, but they won an Oscar. But I will. It's the only defense I will make for that film, which is an abomination. Funny that you say it feels like you're starting to feel that they're not just episodes stretched, because I think most people would say that's a criticism of this film. It just feels like a stock episode of Star Trek Next Gen extended out to, an hour 40 minutes, but slightly better special effects budget. You didn't feel like that for you, obviously. You've never watched the show, so maybe that's why.
No, but I felt that there was more character development. There was more moments of contemplation. There was more discussion on what this meant for people, who they were. Doesn't he fall in love with
he does get you? Yes, he gets a bit hot and heavy with one of the people on the planet who's about 400 years old. So this is basically a fountain of youth story.
Yeah. So I look, I found all the other ones so painful that this one I found less painful. Let's go with that.
Very good. So moving right along, unsurprisingly, Michelle likes the ones that most Trekkies don't like.
But what does that say? That I think that's something to explore there about why.
Moving forward, yeah, it's a possibility. It's just that I guess maybe what Trekkies like, you don't like, and vice versa. We should explain why you're not a fan of a series or the TV shows.
I've never watched them and do not intend on losing another bet.
Well, time will tell. Star Trek Nemesis was released in 2002. The last of the Star Trek Next Gen films. The Enterprise is diverted to the Romulan homeworld Romulus, supposedly because they want to negotiate a peace treaty. Captain Picard and his crew discover a serious threat to the Federation once Praetor Shinzon plans to attack Earth. The big notable addition to the cast here, two of them really, Tom Hardy, in a very young Tom Hardy, in a very early role for him, playing Shinzon, and Ron Perlman playing his Viceroy, but under a lot of makeup. So only the voice really giving him away there. Nice cameo from Kate Mulgrew as Admiral Janeway. What did you make of Nemesis again? A much maligned film in the Trek lineage, not fondly remembered by Trek fans.
I really liked it. It's actually probably the one I've liked the most so far. I thought the actorial chemistry between Patrick Stewart and Tom Hardy was very, very good. I thought Tom Hardy, how old is he? 23 in real life when he did this?
About that, yeah.
He just has such screen presence and angst, and the acting between them and the back and forth is fantastic. I love the storyline about the cloning. I loved the motivation of the maybe that's the case. Maybe the villain is a good villain. Maybe it's a, you know how Marvel suffers from bad villains. Maybe Trek has suffered from bad villains in the past, and this time we get a full arc of the villain and understanding and motivation. The fight scenes were short enough and exciting enough and from interesting angles enough and kept the story upbeat, that it just wasn't endless just looking at the ship. I thought the mind meld stuff was a bit, and the mind rape insinuation,
pretty edgy for Star Trek.
Pretty edgy for Star Trek, I'll give you that. Interesting. I just overall I thought that the acting was better, the storytelling was better, the special effects were better. I really liked it. I don't understand why it's much maligned.
Well, again, I think
what's the criticism?
I think people again thought it was a long episode stretched out to 2 hours. They just sort of, they spoiler alert for a 20-year-old film, death for a popular character in Data. Though apparently, if they were going to make another film, he was going to be brought back. Look, I remember at some point in the past.
I understand why Trekkies don't like this film and didn't like the previous film.
I just think they were a little bit underwhelming in the sense that they weren't very cinema. Look, I can't speak for all Trekkies. They're fairly middling as these films go. So, for example, just the rating of First Contact about a 7.5. These are about a 6.5. So they're not Star Trek 5 bad. I just think people were a little underwhelmed by them. There was a lot of talking, a lot of exposition, not a lot of exploring, not a lot of action, not a lot happening.
I think we got to the bottom of what it is then. What the Trek is like is the exploration of ideas through sci-fi worlds. What I like is character development and relationship between the characters and motivation. And so whenever there's that in the film, I respond to that. And when I get the rest of it, which is not tethered in, there's nothing worse than watching an intellectual exercise in storytelling without it being tethered to character. There's just no point in that. I think it's never good writing to do that.
You should note that the cast itself were generally notably disappointed in this film. But the cast in particular, Jonathan Frakes, Marina Sirtis, and LeVar Burton, had a little fierce criticism at Stuart Baird, the director, over his direction of a film, claiming he hated the Star Trek universe and knew nothing about it. Frakes even called the film a huge disappointment. For his part, Baird expresses his frustration in the Blu-ray commentary, having to tell a story in an established universe with pre-existing design and character relationships, hated having to utilize recycled sets and props, and had trouble remembering the names of the main cast.
I have trouble remembering the main cast. I can understand that.
Well, I mean, you went hired to direct a $50 million film with him in it.
So basically, the main thing that I can get there that is actually a leveled argument is that this person came into this universe without respecting the universe and actually told a good story.
Well, I guess you think it's a good story. The critics didn't, and I don't really look. I mean, a 6.4 is not a disastrous rating online, but I look. If people watching tell me I'm wrong, if you're a Trekkie and you love this film and you think it's one of the better ones, I'd be interested to hear why. But I think the meta is it was a disappointment and a disappointing way to end the series. It was definitely a commercial failure. That's why there wasn't another Star Trek film for 7 years.
Oh, Jesus. Thank God. 7 years.
So the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 49.
I'm still not getting to the essence of why. What is it? I mean, these all criticism when you're just like, oh, he's having a laugh. He's having a laugh. But what do you actually mean? Why did the people not like it? Why?
Well, I'm not everyone, so I can't tell you.
No, but what's the zeitgeist sort of communique on that?
Unless you're a fan of a long memory and a short attention span, sit this out. A flat farewell to the Next Generation crew. Nemesis is a wheel-spinning brand extension exercise bereft of anything beyond generic spacefaring hooey. A movie that blandly goes where too many Star Trek pictures have gone before. The outcome is professionally crafted as ever, but the material feels learned by. So there's some of the criticisms that I can just quickly see here on Rotten Tomatoes, for example.
Okay, so basically they thought that this was kind of like, Star Wars #9, and it should have just been the end, like it should have been for the fans. It should have been akin to the fourth Avenger.
Maybe it felt. I think the read I'm getting quickly here is it felt it was a bit half-hearted, a bit lackluster, and a bit.
Okay.
I don't actually. I think it's actually maybe after watching it with you the other night, I think maybe it's a film worthy of revision now 20 years later, that maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it was when it came out. Just sort of a wet noodle of a film is kind of a vibe I think people get.
Maybe you can just never satisfy that anticipation.
Well, we will find out.
When it's tempered with reality, then after a while, upon reflection, nostalgia kicks in and goes, it wasn't so bad.
I think they could have done a lot better in the sense that they obviously had a director who didn't care. Well, here's an interesting yin and yang. So next week, we're going to have, we're talking about Star Trek 2009, the first of the Abrams-verse films, directed by Mr. Mystery Box, J.J. Abrams himself. And there's someone else who doesn't like Star Trek, and he went out and made a Star Trek film for people who don't like Star Trek. And it did very well, and people liked it. So I will be interested in the yin and the yang for you, and your perspective on yet another installment by someone who, like yourself, isn't a fan, isn't enmeshed in the series lore and history like many people who've made other films are, like Leonard Nimoy or William Shatner, who are deeply ensconced in the Trek universe. I
must say there is no joy. I'm not looking forward to, every time I have to watch one of these films, I'm like, I have to do this because I lost a bet and I am a person of my word. So I got to say, it's not growing on me to the extent where I'm like, yay, gee whiz, let's go and watch that next Trek movie. Yay.
Well, because you're doing it under sufferance. So I don't know. It doesn't surprise me that, you're discovering it.
You would think, though, that maybe by this point I would actually go, hey, this isn't so bad. I actually want to watch what happens. What's the next installment? What's the crew getting up to? There's nothing of that.
What I think I've learned from talking to you over this is that I think we're never going to do it because it would take too much of your time investment from you. And I think I've burned that bridge. I think if you actually sat through some of the better episodes, I think you'd probably find a lot more to enjoy there than you would in the movies, because they didn't have a budget for giant space battles in the TV show. So they had to rely on characterization and story significantly more, and use their limited budget of space battles, in a much more choosy way. So they don't have giant.
Look, let me put it this way. Before I even consider watching any episodes of Star Trek, you would have to agree to watching community episodes. So
I have watched lots of community episodes.
You-
Anyhow,
you-
it's not going to happen. So
5 or 6.
5 it's enough.
That's
How many lockdowns for Insurrection? How many lockdowns for Nemesis?
So probably, I probably give 3.5 lockdown. So that's a 6.5 out of 10 for the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Nemesis, I'd probably give it 2 lockdowns. So 8 out of 10.
Quality. Anyway, so next week, as I said, we'll be back, or hopefully next week, assuming we don't have any other major issues get in the way. We'll be back to talk about the 2009 Star Trek, the first of the Abrams first. Look forward to seeing you then, Michelle. Of course, I won't see you in the meantime.
Of course not. Just then.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and back to you, Spearsy.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. The contrarian of the Trekkie respective. She likes the ones that everyone else doesn't. Questionable behavior.
It's become a pattern. She'll probably love Star Trek Beyond.
Oh no. That can't happen. Now, I would like you to tell me about Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, so I finally bowed to pressure and saw the highest grossing film of the year, the highest grossing film since the emergence of the unknown virus of unspecified origin a couple of years ago. 1.4 billion is taking worldwide.
It's pretty good.
Some big numbers. And very long-term viewers might remember that Top Gun, I think, might have been the second or third film in the chain, I think.
Third, I think, yeah.
2020. I think somehow we step from the final countdown to Top Gun or something like that.
Yeah, it was Streets of Fire, Philadelphia Experiment, Final Countdown, then Top Gun number 4.
And I don't think I'd actually seen Top Gun before that. And I remember being deeply, powerfully underwhelmed by this film. Like, it was like, I recall saying it was like a series of music videos that were sort of tacked together. It didn't seem to have a cohesive storyline. It'd be like scene, and then, very limited connective tissue.
Yeah.
And I remember being flummoxed at why this film was held in such high regard by so many people. And then being even more flummoxed at 25 years later, we're going to do a fucking sequel?
Yep.
Why? This is why, because it takes 1.4 billion worldwide. It has an 8.5 in IMDb audience score. Its Metascore is 78. And you know what? This film is better than the original. That is quite remarkable. You see a sequel made 30 years after the fact is actually better than the original. So let's talk about the plot. After 30 years, Maverick is still pushing the envelope as a top naval aviator that must confront ghosts of his past when he leads Top Gun's elite graduates on a mission that demands the ultimate sacrifice for those chosen to fly it. Cast this time, obviously, we have Tom Cruise back as Pete Maverick Mitchell. He's joined by Academy Award winner Jennifer Connelly, Miles Teller as Bradley Brewster Bradshaw, Val Kilmer in a cameo role. John Hamm plays the evil, chief who doesn't want him to succeed. And those are probably the names you're going to know. The director this time is obviously not Tony Scott, because Tony Scott has been dead for 10 years. He's Joseph Kosinski, who directed another film we watched on the show a while ago, Only the Brave, the firefighting film starring Josh Brolin. He also directed Oblivion, which starred Tom Cruise. Unfortunately for everyone, he also directed Spiderhead, the Chris Hemsworth film on Netflix, which is really not good at all. So the essential plot, we meet Pete Maverick Mitchell. He's a test pilot now. He defies a general played by Ed Harris, a brief cameo, and flies an experimental plane to try and prove that it's capable of going at Mach 10 and fulfill a contract to keep that airplane project going. The consequence of that is for him to be basically shifted back to a job at the Top Gun Academy. This has been as a result of Iceman, Val Kilmer, putting a good word for him and ensuring he doesn't get completely grounded and discharged or whatever it is that happens to fucking naval pilots. I don't know. The idea being that he is one of a few aviators or people in the Navy who actually has confirmed air-to-air kills and air-to-air combat experience. There is a mission coming up to bomb a uranium generator in an unnamed country, which we certainly isn't Russia, isn't China, certainly isn't a Middle Eastern country. And it's a very difficult mission. The parameters are very unusual, and they need Maverick to come in and train, as it sort of notes there, these elite graduates, put them together as a team and train them in a way that's going to allow them to actually complete this mission. Complicating factor is the addition into the team of Miles Teller's Bradley Rooster Bradshaw, I think it is. He is the son of Goose, the character played by Anthony Edwards, I think it was, in the original film in the 80s. For those who are uninitiated and don't remember what happened in that film, Goose dies at the end. So, spoiler alert for a fucking 40-year-old film. So, Goose dies at the end. Brett Miles Teller plays his son, and there's insinuated that there is some friction there between the two of them. We find out later that Tom Cruise got his application to the Naval Academy pulled, and they don't get along. So he included the tension. Fact that Bradley doesn't like Tom doesn't like Maverick, and they have to work together. Additionally, we have a romance or a pre-existing relationship between Pete and Jennifer Connelly's character Penny Benjamin. She owns a bar where the Top Gun Academy is. They've got some sort of history, which is hinted at, and there's a very soft and average B story about them rekindling their previous romantic relationship. The head of Top Gun Academy, Admiral Cyclone Simpson, played by John Hamm, he's not a fan of Pete Mitchell, doesn't want him there. He's only there because Admiral Kazansky, Iceman, has put in a good word for him. And all of this and the ensuing mission play into the standard sort of scenes of people flying fighter jets and bombing various things. And it looks really good. I'll give it that much. The photography is outstanding. Mm-hmm. The special effects are fantastic. I suspect, I haven't looked into it, that there was significant cooperation from the U.S. military yet again. Mm-hmm. People might, if you go way back to when we did that show on episode about 100 episodes ago, they set up recruiting booths outside the screenings of Top Guns back in the 80s to try and sign people up for the Navy, and I think it was pretty successful. So it's not surprising that they let them back in to, like, there are so many shots of them taking off and landing on aircraft carriers. You know, not too many people have aircraft carriers available for you to shoot on apart from the US military. So
Tom Cruise has access.
Tom Cruise has one, I'm sure. The Church of Scientology is a couple of blocks away. I think they've got one out the back.
Mm-hmm. I think we've said Church of Scientology one too many times. Our viewership has spiked to 5,000.
So it looks good. The effects are good.
Mm-hmm.
The acting is, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene of him running, which of course there is.
Contractual obligation.
I think the film is elevated by the presence of Miles Teller, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's actually, when he puts his mind to it, he's a very good actor, Miles Teller. I mean, he's done some shit movies, Fantastic Four. But he was in Divergent, I think, as well.
Yeah. But he was in Only the Brave, which we watched.
As I say, this is directed by the same guy who directed Only the Brave. War Dogs, that was piece of crap.
Mm-hmm.
He was the Spiderhead, same director, piece of crap. But he's fantastic in The Offer, which we talked about a couple of months ago. And Whiplash, of course, he was mind-blowing at Whiplash. So I think Miles Teller is actually a very fine actor in the right role. And this is a good role for him, playing Goose's son, Brewster. And, it's a nice connection to the previous film. It's a fairly easy to understand reason for there to be tension between the two men. And it gives the film something to sort of lean on for a good portion of the story and the resolution. Because, this film is anything but unpredictable. It's incredibly predictable. Their later film resolution of their issues feels satisfying. The rest of the cast, who are young nobodies I've never heard of, all solid. John Hamm is, he plays a really good, you evil Admiral you who's trying to get Maverick's way. Maverick gets results, damn it. So he's good in that role. He's well suited for it. Jennifer Connelly doesn't get a lot to do, unfortunately, for such a talented actor. But what she does do, she brings her A game because
she usually tries.
She's always good quality. It's nice to see her get a little bit more of a meaty role in future. But I thought it was fine. It was, like I said, I would not put the original as fine. I thought the original was terrible. This is entertaining. You know what it felt like? It felt like a 90s action film.
Okay.
It felt like a film like The Rock or
Demolition Man.
Something like, maybe not quite as Demolition Man. At least had an interesting story. Let's not go overboard here. Come on, like something that Michael Bay directed in the 90s. Like Con Air or Armageddon or something like that, or Face Off without the John Woo-isms. It was big, loud, stupid, but kind of fun in parts. It probably overstayed its welcome a little bit at 2 hours and 10 minutes. You could have cut 15 minutes or so out of it, I think. It didn't need the full 2 hour, 10-minute runtime. Some parts of it kind of felt like they'd just been put in there because, is a throwback to the original, fan service, if you will. So there's the famous volleyball scene in the original. In this one, they play a game of touch football on the beach. And there's even a scene where John Hamm comes and goes, aren't you training to be fighter pilots? Why are you doing this? And I'm like, this is an excellent point, John Hamm.
Thank you, voice of reason.
So it could definitely have been cut back a little bit. It's not quite as tight as those Bruckheimer action films in the 90s were. It's also probably not as funny, if you know what I mean. Like there would be, I don't know, there are supposed to be some lighthearted moments in here, but I didn't find them lighthearted. And also, it's got the Tom Cruise element and the fact that he just doesn't look like he's really old. Like, I don't know. Are there 60-year-old fighter pilots? I don't know. I don't think there are. So that is a slight, little, I'm being very, very picky here in the sense that it's perfectly cromulent. It's certainly more entertaining than anything Marvel's shit out recently.
Yeah.
it was for me, it was a nice throwback to that feel you used to have of, a 90s action film where you were just in there, entertained for 90, 100 minutes. Some big explosions. The bad guy's bad. The good guys win at the end. There's some interesting stuff happens. Interesting action scenes. The characters' relationships are understandable. They're not overly complex. The film's not hand-fisting, a political message or a diversity message in there necessarily. So, I mean, that may be a criticism of the film. I don't know how many female fighter pilots there are in the real world. There's only one in here. It didn't feel any of that kind of thing that you see so often in other films these days. It's just there to have a good time and get off a screen. It could have got off a screen faster. If it could have done it without Tom Cruise, that probably would have been preferable as well. But is it a 1.4? Well, look, it's made 1.4 billion. I mean, is it the 65th best film of all time, which it is in top IMDb 250? No. Is it an 8.5 movie? It's a 7.5 movie for me.
Yeah.
But people have a real strong attachment to these films. They love Top Gun, and so to have such an entertaining film and attached to a property they love.
There we go.
I would be very, very unsurprised to see a third one.
Mm-hmm. Or they try and merge. They go, all right, you know what? We've confirmed that Top Gun is a bankable name. What if they use that as a launching point for the video game adaptation of the classic Afterburner?
Top Gun Afterburner. Oh, I think you're going to be a bit of a crossover. I think you're like, Top Gun Beverly Hills Cop Maverick.
Oh, no.
Beverly Hills Top Gun?
You know that they're doing Beverly Hills Cop 4, right?
I do. Eddie Murphy joins the Navy.
I don't want them to make all these movies.
Crocodile Dundee, Maverick.
Crocodile Dundee in space is what I want. Thank you, sir.
They were going to do a crossover with Crocodile Dundee at Beverly Hills Cop thing at one point in time.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I'm not going to the school. Should you go and see Maverick? If this is on for free, you're on a streaming service somewhere, check it out. I think it's on video on demand. I wouldn't go out of my way. Look, it was. I really don't want to sound like I'm being too negative. I kind of enjoyed parts of it. Like I said, it was too long, but it was a lot better than I thought it would be when I got announced. I mean, long-term viewers will know how skeptical I was about this thing.
Yes.
Actually, they stuck the landing pretty good.
Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, success is in results, I suppose. So, yeah, they've got 1.4 billion positive results. Sure. Now,
I'm interested. Speaking of blockbusters, you've got a chance to see Thor, right? The new Thor film.
I did, yeah. That was a film.
It certainly had scenes that were shot, and I believe there was cinematography involved.
Yes.
People wrote music and scored the film, and then it was projected on the screens around the world. Hence, classifying this as a film.
And the length of it was definitely a feature film, But wow, they I don't know what happened with this movie. It's an hour and 58 minutes, so it's certainly not the worst offender for length of time, but it doesn't really do anything of any particular use or value with that time. As you said in your thoughts on Love and Thunder, Christian Bale is great. And he persistently feels like he's in a different movie because of this ongoing lame joke about the ex versus the current girlfriend humor of Mjolnir versus Stormbreaker, as well as Jane Foster coming in. And I appreciate the story that they're trying to tell with Jane Foster having cancer and dying, but at the same time, why is Mjolnir making it worse?
reasons.
It doesn't make much sense. And if it's purely for story of her choosing to live her best life, it's like, okay, well, her being a world-renowned, noted scientific genius of the modern age of Earth. Nah, fuck it. I want to swing a camera around for the last 6 months of my life. Okay, sure.
I mean, I can understand that. That's a choice I would probably make.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The screaming goats were just annoying. I don't know. Korg being used far too much. He was fun for little pockets during Ragnarok, and that was the extent. He's not a leading character thing, and they use him just too much, and they really sideline Valkyrie, considering the character growth that she had, becoming the new leader of New Asgard. But then it's like, oh, so she hasn't actually moved on. She's still just using alcohol to escape her problems and not really face them and do anything. And that's not the point of this movie. So, okay, move on, please, ladies and gentlemen.
What I thought the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff was pretty disappointing.
Yeah. Again, it was trying to play it for fun and for comedy, but it just didn't. It felt bored, like not boring, but it felt like everything about it, every character in those sequences was just bored. Like, okay, that doesn't usually make for compelling or interesting or fun or entertaining television or movies. So, what exactly are you trying to do here? It felt like a director being bored, and
it felt like he was like he's half of his mind on this and half of his mind on the 16 different other projects he's got on the go.
Yeah, because there wasn't any of his kind of like Taika Waititi has proven himself a very strong director and a particularly good hand at balancing serious things with comedy. And there was none of that with this. And the immaturity of Thor, it just kind of took him back to where he was before Ragnarok. And it's like, okay, I really don't know what you're doing with Thor. And I don't know what you're doing. This, to its credit, this movie felt like a standalone movie, the first standalone movie we've had for a long time in the MCU. But it also felt like the first genuinely pointless movie because it didn't really progress anything or anyone in genuine ways. That it introduced the character of Love by the end of it, if that's what they're going to go with, Love and Thunder. And yeah, maybe they're going to try and make Thor and Love, or his adopted daughter, whatever they actually call her in the thing, into like a healthy father-daughter relationship as a mirror, as an opposite of Thanos and Gamora. That could be interesting, but I don't know. Don't really care. And that's the worst thing that a movie can do. It was boring. It felt bored, and it didn't care. So,
it was too much. It's like, let's just do what we did last time, but turn it up to 11 this time.
Yeah, and I love Guns N' Roses classic songs. I genuinely do. And having one or two here or there, but having so much Guns N' Roses and so many Guns N' Roses references, like, quite why?
And a kid naming himself after Axl Rose, and you're like,
yeah.
okay.
I don't get the why. There's no logic as to why that is happening in the story. Like, okay.
It's weird. When James Gunn does it in Peacemaker, You know, like John Cena being into like glam hair metal bands from the 80s.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's interesting. It adds to his character. It tells us a little bit of something about him. Whereas it just feels gratuitous in Thor. It's like, hey, remember Guns N' Roses? They were cool. Remember when music was cool?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just trash. It just feels. I feel very, very weird saying this about DC because, how the turntables have turned. If like DC is getting something right that Marvel's getting quite wrong here. But it feels artificial instead. So we've got a cool song to play during the trailer in Marvel, whereas, like I said, it's actually a character feature. And the thing is, I know James Gunn is a big fan of 80s metal as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just feels like something. It somehow that adds to the authenticity for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. For what they're doing, the way that they're, for lack of a better descriptor, progressing the character of Thor, Chris Hemsworth continues to be good as Thor. He knows the comedy timing that is required to deliver the Thor they want to present. It was nice to see Natalie Portman back, but at the same time, it's like, okay, you've brought her back just to kill her. That's it. And it's like that's not actual. That's not character development or anything like that. That's using someone as a tool, which that's whatever. I don't care.
If there's a tool in this film, it's Russell Crowe.
Oh God. What was with the accent?
Remember, apparently they recorded two scenes with two different accents. And that's the one they chose.
Oh boy. Russell Crowe has not ever proven himself to be particularly adept at accents.
No, he kind of had that weird, vague mid-Atlantic accent he did for his American films.
Yeah.
He did a Southern accent in a film, and it wasn't The Insider. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, he did his English accent in Master and Commander. It was just very much talking like anyone pretending to be Prince Charles or King Charles now, like pop. I don't know. It was messy. I was bored.
Different. It was disappointing, was it? Really was. That Ragnarok sort of breathed new life into Thor.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, Marvel took that new life that Taika had given it and used it really well, I think, in the subsequent films he was in. Namely the Infinity Wars and Endgame. It was really nicely set up. You wonder who was Taika given those beats, or did Taika create the beats? And then Russo said, "Cool, let's take that and run with it." But and then to sort of fall back to, oh shit, let's just do the same thing again. I found it. Look, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen.
No.
Like some people have said it's worse than The Dark World. I think that's maybe a stretch, but it's probably on a par. It's fallen back from its such high heights.
Yeah, but it's on Disney Plus, so everyone's probably already subscribed. So if you didn't watch it at the theaters, you can watch it now.
It says something that, like, I have no desire to go back and watch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Zero. I have completely forgotten about it. I watched for those who, if you're interested, there's a YouTube channel called The Critical Drinker, who I steal as much material from as possible. He's very good, but he's also sometimes he steps in this line. Sometimes he's the guy talking about Rings of Power, going on about representation and how men aren't treated nicely in film. You're like, that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. What's your videos, mate? He has a series called The Drinker Fixes, and he takes a film and goes, well, given the rough elements of this film, the storyline, could you have made it better? And he did one on Multiverse of Madness recently, and you sat and going, wow, that would have been 100 times better than what they actually ended up doing. I mean, it's so much better. So if you're curious, I strongly recommend jumping over. If you're watching us on YouTube now, just, after we finished, of course, jump on over to the Critical Drinkers channel and check out his the Drinker Fix's Multiverse of Madness. It just made me think they really are dropping the ball right now. We talk about it every week, so I won't go on and on.
Yeah.
But I have the same sort of thing here. I have no desire to go back and watch Love and Thunder again.
I'm trying to remember the last or the newest Marvel release movie that I watched more than once. And
Endgame?
It was probably Endgame. Yeah, it was probably Endgame. So it's been a while. It's been a hot minute. I haven't gone back to rewatch any of the TV series either.
Why would you?
Yeah.
And not good. Anyway, we have stuck the boots into Disney and Marvel mercilessly this week, as we do every week, and not just because it's cool. I think it's fair to say it's a genuinely held opinion.
Yeah. Now, I want to just finish up with just some early thoughts on Cyberpunk Endrunners, if that's okay.
Yes, we talked earlier. You played a little bit of the game. What do you think of the show?
It's interesting. It's definitely lending from the sort of like 80s and 90s style of animation. Particularly, anyone thinks cyberpunk, they're going to generally think of something like Ghost in the Shell or Akira, which that kind of the way of animation in that they are borrowing somewhat from, but you also get more of the cyber side of things compared to those ones and the updated stuff. So if you saw any of the Animatrix ones, there's more of that kind of feel to it. Obviously, this is 2D and classic animated, whereas the Animatrix was a variety of different styles. But this is an interesting. I don't know if it's based off of some pre-existing stuff or if it's just using cyberpunk novel that was created as a launching point. But this is Cyberpunk Endrunners. Street kid trying to survive in a technology and body modification obsessed city of the future. Having everything to lose, he chooses to stay alive by becoming an edge runner, a mercenary outlaw, also known as a cyberpunk. This has got 2 names in it right now that I definitely know. One of them is Giancarlo Esposito. He plays the character of Faraday. And the other one is Matthew Mercer, Mr. Critical Role DM himself, plays Falco. Other voices in there, I don't actually recognize any of them. But there are 10 episodes so far. Season 1 has released in its entirety, as is the traditional Netflix way. I am 3 episodes in now, I think it is. Let me just quickly look at that. 3 episodes in. It's interesting. It's got enough of the style, animation-wise, to keep me engaged visually. The story is still early as to what they're doing. It is very much an adult-orientated thing, not so brazen with its "we're going to be adult" like The Legend of Vox Machina was, like you talked about, where it was like, oh yeah, the characters are having sex right in front of you and things. There are little pockets of that, like when they're going into their kind of virtual screens and stuff, there'll be a pop-up screen of porn and things like that. Or there's a shot where the main character, he's walking down the street and you see just on the very edge of the frame, you see some guy just with like a cup put over his dick, and it's very clearly some kind of virtual reality masturbation thing. And so there's definitely those notes of that, and then there's drug references and violence and all of that stuff, which is quintessential when most people think of cyberpunk themed stuff. Story itself is slowly unfolding. We're being introduced to some mildly interesting characters, if painting very much to the extremes of characters. I'm curious to see how it's going to continue on. The episodes are like 22, 23 minutes long. So it's palatable as all right, I'll watch 1 or 2 and then I'll go to bed or whatever. And it's just offering something a little bit different compared to most anime or animation that's out there, Western animation in particular, where so much of it is being based on fantasy stuff or slice of life kind of things. This is just something a little different. It's a little off center, which is refreshing. But so far, so good.
Glad to hear it.
Hmm.
This is interesting now. This video game, maybe that's where futurist TV shows. After we had the League of Legends TV show, which name escapes me at this moment in time.
Arcane.
But, I don't know if I mentioned, but before I did watch an episode or two of it, and shockingly, you were correct. It was really good. Which had no business being, considering it's based on a game I had no interest in. But maybe this is where the future lies for a bit. Video game.
Maybe
turn into TV shows more because the films haven't worked out so well.
No. Yeah, but we'll find out, I guess, because next year we've got The Last of Us, the TV show, coming out, which I don't really see any point of, considering how Naughty Dog create their games to be blockbuster, narrative-driven stories. Feels like they've already told the story, so I don't know what else they're going to really bring to this, but...
And they've got Fallout, the TV show, as well, coming at some point in the future.
There's a Bioshock TV show as well, I think.
As you said, eventually I might be right. Sort of.
One day, statistics will just tip.
I'll be like 75. I told you so 47 years ago.
It's like dying breath. It's like, just check the IMDb page quickly for
What's
me.
the Rotten Tomatoes for the reboot of Assassin's Creed?
No, don't put that stuff out into the world. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that's it for me this week.
There we go. We're wrapping up after a double bill of Trek Respective, talking about Rocky Horror Picture Show. We're going to be talking about James and the Giant Peach, the animated version. We talked the Rings of Power, a little bit of She-Hulk and D23 news. We talked about Top Gun Maverick, Thor Love and Thunder, and finishing up with Cyberpunk and Edge Runners. It was quite a good show for 2 hours and 7 minutes.
Back to our normally scheduled length this week. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff.
And buy my book.
Buy his book.
Vaughn book on Amazon. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this has been sponsored by me and Vaughn, a Volition Story Saga. Volition Saga Story. There we go. I know the name of my own book. Until next time, good night.